We will start with Max and Hamilton. Max Verstappen at the end suggesting that he should have not let Lewis Hamilton back pass, taken a 5-second penalty given by the stewards in the hope that he would bridge that 5-second gap by the end of the race. Sam, do you think that that was a viable strategy? Should he have gone ahead with that?
I'm going to start off actually first by addressing the rule itself, in that when you're making a legal overtake and you don't give it back, you only get a 5-second time penalty. I think that is a ridiculous rule, and that if you hold on to your position and you finish the race ahead of that person, they should be swapped back around regardless. I don't see why you should just get a little slap on the wrist for doing something illegal. Just get away with it. Moving on from that, sorry, just got to bend that out. That was an absolute belter. I am so pumped. He's got every right in terms of the rules set as they are to say, I can pull it out. You may as well let me pull it out. But at the same time, that Red Bull looked dominant. It was a monster through that middle sector. He had pace all race long, and realistically probably should have got that Red Bull in front of the Mercedes on track, illegally, where it's fair. And I think Hamilton called it out correctly. The stewards called it out correctly. It was actioned quickly and appropriately, and we got the fight that was fair, legal, and on track. It was pretty mental, and I feel like Max Verstappen probably could have got past him again. As the tyres were all over the place. It was ambitious to say, though, that you could pull out a 5-second lead when the tyres were clearly dying off very quickly. And it showed once again that Hamilton was able just to cling on to tyres. He was able to make them work much like Sergio Perez, king of the tyre, making the tyres last. It's hard to predict the future. It's hard to see the other scenarios that went there. Max did the right thing by letting Hamilton go back through and then challenging him again. Unfortunately, it didn't go Max's way, which is a shame. But I'd rather see that 6th, 7th, 10th battle right down to the wire than sit there watching Max slowly pull out a lead with nothing really happening other than just watching a clock. That isn't as exciting for me. So in terms of race viewership, I think it went the right way. I think it made it very exciting, very enjoyable. Loved watching that end. One of the best ends to a race we've seen for a long time. Whereas I think if it had gone the other way, it might have been a bit of a snooze fest. We might have just gone, it was only 4.7, so Max loses on a time thing, which, has excitement in its own right, but not the same way as an on-track battle can have, I don't think.
Do you think that there was any merit in Verstappen keeping that lead, Harry, or do you think he did the right thing and obeyed the stewards?
Yeah, I don't know if no, I do agree with Sam. I'm not sure if he could have pulled out that 5-second gap. I know it was a monster in that middle sector, but that's quite ambitious because there weren't many laps to go. I think what's quite telling here is how quick. I know they got a message from race control supposedly, but it's how quickly Red Bull reacted and told him to give the position back. Because with Max, they've definitely been stung with this in the past. So, and I think that's also then telling of where the trouble lies with these track limit rules, that we're having to do this. But yeah, I think it was the right decision to hand the place back. I'm sure Max felt he could have pulled the gap out, but yeah, I think it would have been a tough ask. Yeah, it's just frustrating when we get things decided by that. But it was a fantastic race, so I can't complain. Can't complain about the result at all. I think the only thing that I would point out, and this is a point made by Brundle in the commentary, was he should have given it back in a different place. He should have given it back on the main straight and then popped back in the DRS again straight after. Where he did it, he then had to go through a middle sector where turbulent air was tough, and then he went wide and then ruined his tyres. So yeah, but that's heat of the moment decision. But I think overall the right decision. I'm sure they'll be frustrated, but it's a tantalising prospect for the rest of the year, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, that's the number one takeaway from this, is that if we can get that repeated a few times over, no one will be complaining whatsoever. I think Max Verstappen had a decision to make in that moment, and it was a very much a heat of the moment kind of thing. He had to make the decision. What was more realistic? Was it more realistic that he would pull out the 5-second gap, or was it more realistic that he would get another opportunity to overtake Lewis Hamilton and get it done? So he had to make the decision which one was more likely, and for me, he made the right decision. I think it was more likely that he was going to make that overtake again rather than pull out that 5-second gap. He was, at that point in the race, he was not lapping a ridiculous amount quicker than Lewis Hamilton, and I don't think he would have had enough even with Lewis Hamilton's aging tyres. I get your point on where he should have done it. I think he would have been better served by doing it elsewhere. However, it is a heat of the moment thing, so I'm not going to blame him too much for that. We know that Lewis Hamilton himself has been at the centre of that type of controversy before. If you cast your minds back to, I believe it was the Belgian Grand Prix, you might remember that Lewis Hamilton had a thing where he was forced to give a position back, didn't give it enough back before making the overtake again, and was consequently penalised for it post-race. Of course, Verstappen didn't want to fall into that same trap, so I can understand him being cautious with doing it, but I think part of this is on Verstappen. I think he should have absolutely had the pace to do it again. And the lap after he handed the place back, I think probably the 2 laps after, were very scruffy, to the point where he lost DRS down the main straight one time, only just claimed it for that last lap. If he's within sort of 6 tenths rather than 1.1 seconds, then suddenly, the DRS does the work for you to an extent, and he gets another opportunity into turn 4 perhaps, or even turn 1 again. So I think Verstappen made the right call. There's also the factor you have to bear in mind here of the stewards. We've complained a lot of the time that the stewards are inconsistent. They can be a bit all over the place with the penalties. You are essentially putting your race in the hands of the gods at that moment. You have to say, it might be a 5-second penalty that they give you. It's the stewards. They might have given him a drive-through. They might have given him a 7-race ban. It's the stewards. You can't predict what they're going to do. So I completely understand them taking matters into their own hands and making Verstappen, make that move rather than relying on the stewards somewhat. I mean, in terms of the overall race, because if we look back to, say, sort of lap 12, lap 13, Verstappen had I think it was about a 1.5 second gap over Lewis Hamilton before Hamilton went in for his first pit stop. The guys then went on their own separate ways in terms of strategy, and it's come back, and obviously the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton has won. Do you think that this is a massive missed opportunity for Sam? Do you think this?
I think
you really missed the trick there, Sam. You really missed the trick.
What have I been doing the whole week of season? I've been building up to this, and I've missed out. I'm gutted.
Do you think it was a missed opportunity for Max, Sam ?
Sentence structure is important, kids.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's a massive missed opportunity, but I also think it shows credit and pays credit to the ability of Lewis Hamilton. If Max was driving, I think, against Bottas in that scenario, against Perez in that scenario, even against Leclerc in that scenario, I think Max wins this race. I think it really does show the ability of Lewis Hamilton there and there. And I think it looked like it was all going Red Bull's way. And then I think the Mercedes pulled the cheeky fast one. I don't think anyone was expecting a proper 3-stop to be in the question. The double hard tyre option to be apparent. No one has really been talking about how viable the hard tyre has been all weekend. And all of a sudden, Lewis Hamilton goes in. He knocks out a 2-second a lap faster time than Max Verstappen. Then pull out a 6.5 second lead. He pays off for that first stint. Hamilton maintains those tyres brilliantly the whole way through the rest of the race. And is able to eke out that performance right to the end. And I think Verstappen, realistically, it was all Red Bull and Verstappen's race to lose. And they did lose it. It fell apart for them right at the death there, which is a real shame because it would have been super cool to go into the second race of the season with someone other than Mercedes leading the championships. But hey-ho, I think that Red Bull are going to have a pretty stellar chance in Imola. It suits them. Yeah, I think Red Bull threw this one away a little bit. I feel like they could have done that a little bit more, been a little bit more on the ball, a little bit more on the edge, and they probably would have taken this one home. As we saw, 7 tenths separated them. All they had to do was one lap, probably slightly better, and it would have gone their way.
What do you reckon, Harry? Do you think this was a missed opportunity for them?
Yeah, I think they'll definitely really not taking the win, but I think they, even in Red Bull's minds, they knew it wasn't going to be easy. They weren't going to just run away from Hamilton. If they could run away from Bottas, potentially yes, but not Lewis Hamilton, I'm afraid. So I don't think they'll obviously be disappointed. I don't think they'll be really disappointed to have lost it, especially considering the pace that they've got in that car. I think they're going to, like as fans we are, I think they'll be very encouraged at how close that win was and how much, it was not only won, but it was won in the most part by Lewis Hamilton, not necessarily by the fast Mercedes car. So I think Red Bull will be encouraged by that. It's another, and this will get onto Perez, and I'm not blaming him necessarily, but it's the issue again where he was ganged up on by two Mercedes, and there's only one Max Verstappen, unfortunately.
There's only one Max Verstappen. Sorry,
exactly.
It sounds like a classic football chant.
Absolute lad. Yeah, they needed Perez there. They just need another Red Bull there, basically. But I think that'll come this year. So it's a missed opportunity, but I think the way things are shaping up, it may not be a really costly one.
I'm going to be completely honest here, and we do record this pretty much straight after the Grand Prix, so maybe my opinion changes on this when I've had a bit more of a think about it. But I think Red Bull nailed it. I think they absolutely nailed it, which could be the most frustrating thing for them, and it could also be the most concerning thing for them as well. I think they, in terms of a strategy, got it absolutely spot on, in that Lewis Hamilton came into the pits first of that leading three. I think it was about lap 13 or so that he came into the pits. It would have been very easy for Red Bull to respond straight away to that, be goaded into that strategy that clearly they didn't think was right. They ended up, not falling for that. So, hurdle one complete in that respect, and they ended up going about sort of 6 laps or so more, maybe not quite that many, actually 4 or 5 laps more, because they felt that was the strategy for them. If you look at the stints for the teams, Max Verstappen did 17 laps on the medium tyre. He then goes to another set of mediums, which he does a good job on again, goes about 21 laps or so on those, and then closes out with a hard stint of about 17, 18 laps. So he pretty much evenly split it across, those stints. I think they had a very clear idea of what the ideal strategy was, and they played to it perfectly. I don't think they were brought into the games that Mercedes were playing here. And you look at Mercedes, conversely, I actually think they didn't nail this. If you think that they, for Lewis Hamilton, did 13 laps on the first medium stint, that essentially leaves them with 43 laps to do and 2 sets of hard tyres to do it on. Now, if you're thinking about this rationally, you would say, okay, 43 laps to do 2 hard stints, 22 laps and then 21 laps, you'd say, or something like that. Mercedes had Lewis Hamilton do the first stint of 15 laps, and then the second stint was 28 laps, so they didn't split it very evenly between those two stints at all, and it forced Lewis Hamilton, of course, to pull it out the bag on that final hard run. So, I think Red Bull actually strategically did a fine job, considering Perez wasn't in the picture. And it still wasn't enough. And I will say, I think part of it is Max Verstappen not getting the overtake done. I think a large part of it is Lewis Hamilton. That was one of his most impressive wins in recent times. I really think that was one of his better ones. So, it's a long list of good wins he's had as well. So, yeah, fair play to him. I think they missed an opportunity, but Lewis Hamilton, 28 lap old hard tyres. He had to pull it out the bag, and he did.
It was a corker. I'm just glad we're back. Sorry, folks. I'm trying to calm down. I am so pumped that we are back with the new season. It's great.
I mean, your sentiment is shared across all three of us, and perhaps a few million more as well. Just to focus on Valjee Bottas for a moment, he got the fastest lap of the race, so he took home 16 points rather than 15. He finished third, of course, on the podium. Wasn't really a factor. He was a few seconds back from those leading two. The 10-second pit stop, of course, completely ruined any chance of him being a factor for the rest of the race. But his strategy was largely the same as Lewis Hamilton, apart from that pit stop at the very end there to get the fastest lap. Sam, do you think it would have been worth Bottas going perhaps a little bit longer on that first stint than he did?
Bottas wasn't in the picture from the moment the lights went green. He wasn't good enough for the majority of the weekend, I don't think. He was, 3/4 tenths away from Lewis Hamilton in qualifying, and then come the start of the race, he gets jumped by Leclerc, he's being challenged by Norris. There is already difficulty there for him, and he has to take those positions back. I think a Bottas of old maybe wouldn't have had the guts to dive it down and get those positions done and dusting as quickly as he did, so that's good to see him really making the moves to get back into third. But after that, he was never in that conversation. He was a slight threat, but 7-8 seconds back from the race leader isn't enough for an undercut, isn't enough to try something different on the strategy. He got, obviously thrown under the bus a little bit with a difficult pit strategy there, extra 10 seconds in the box is never what anyone needs, but that race was out the door for him. I don't think, even if the pits had been exactly the same times as Lewis Hamilton's, he would have challenged. To me, it just cemented what had already happened for him. He was only ever going to be viable for a third place. He was not good enough today. There was no selfish attitude. And if he wants to keep that seat going into next season, I know it's only the first race of this season, but this was not the way to kickstart things. Bottas needs to do better than this. And it wasn't good enough for me. I don't really care about the strategy. He wasn't good enough anyway.
What do you reckon, Harry? Do you think it would have been worth Mercedes putting a bit of variety into their strategies, maybe a one-stop or a more concerted three-stop for him?
I mean, from Mercedes' point of view, no, it didn't really matter because he came home in third. He was going to come home in third anyway with the pace he had. I think, Valtteri has already said, and Sam touched on this, Valtteri said again before the season, he's going to be more demanding this year and question calls if they come in. When Hamilton came in and it was clear what he was doing, why then when they called him Valtteri in to do pretty much the same strategy, why then didn't he say, I mean, we didn't necessarily hear it, he might have questioned it, but normally that would be picked up. Why didn't he say, no, I want to do something different, like maybe do something different than what Lewis is doing? Because I know the pit stop was long anyway, but it was worth a punt from where he was. He was in no man's land. He was far behind the top two, and he was well in front of Norris in fourth. So why he didn't try and go for that, that's always kind of the issue with Valtteri. He's just a little bit too nice for his own good. But
you're nice person. Stop being so nice.
You're nice botty.
No more nice botties, please.
It's just a bit of a shame. But he was in the early stages. He was for Mercedes. He was there. He did the job he needed to, being that two-pronged attack on Verstappen. And then once he was kind of out of the picture, they just shoved him on the same strategy as Hamilton, and it's an easy third place. So he was never in the picture. But I do think he should have tried, from his point of view, to do something different, because it wasn't going to do anything other than to bring home a third place for him.
Yeah, I mean, as much as the attention towards Mercedes, having a favourite driver or not, I actually think they play things down the middle a lot of the time. And today they did again, and I don't think it was actually to their own benefit. I don't think it would have made a difference regardless what strategy Valjee Bottas was on, but they at least could have put a bit of variety in there for the sake of they had two drivers against one. Max Verstappen is only one man, as much as he tries to be more than that.
Only one.
Exactly. So he can only commit to one strategy. Lewis Hamilton, by pitting early, had committed to his. I think it would have been worth them trying something different to beat Verstappen. Obviously, they did anyway by going with the same strategy, and fair enough. But I think it would have been worth them trying something different at least. Whether that was a one-stop or a three-stop. Technically, they did three-stop, but it was only because of that late pit stop to fit on the soft tyres. I will say about the pit stop, it's absolutely not an excuse for Valtteri Bottas, and I really hope that he doesn't lean on it, because there isn't a good time to do a 10-second pit stop, but if you are going to pick a time, they pretty much pick the best possible time, because he was finishing third regardless of whether that pit stop was 10 seconds, 15 seconds or 2 seconds. So, it didn't really make much of a difference. He wasn't going to be a factor anyway. So I hope he doesn't lean on it, and I hope he sort of takes this on the chin and realises it was his own pace. I'd like to see them try something a bit different. It's credit to Lewis Hamilton that, they won when they didn't actually try something different. So, yeah, maybe Mercedes were in these 2-on-1 scenarios, particularly because they know this year is going to be a bit closer than last year and the year before. Maybe it's worth them exploring a bit more. Driver of the day, Sam, who have you got?
There is about 27 drivers that could be driver of the day today, and which is amazing because there's only 20 drivers on the grid.
How many races have you been watching?
Honestly, the spread was brilliant. We got some great performances up and down the field. There were some ambitious, great moves by Alonso. P.S. folks, Alonso is back. The cheeky little moves that he was chucking down the inside were great to see. Yeah, let's still do the two-time world champ dance, everyone. Get your arms behind your back, left to right. which was great to see. God Leclerc stuck it somehow in fourth for qualifying, and they had a very good race going throughout the whole race. Lando Norris, it was like the top three, and then Norris is F1.5 now, and then the rest of the grid is F1.8, and then you obviously have F2, which is the other sport, it was amazing. It was absolutely brilliant. Perez from pit lane to fifth. The man loves going from last place to achieving great things, and I don't care where other junior Red Bull drivers have finished in that Red Bull seat, that second Red Bull seat. That man, with confidence, executing a brilliant race, and I'm really excited to see what he can do with a fully working car. Max was great, not great enough to take the win, but Lewis Hamilton is driver of the day, because that was, if you've got a 7-time world champion, if you've got someone that's won over 90 Grand Prix, and you're sat there going, that was one of the best races we've seen that man do in a long time, then what more do you need as a compliment? It was brilliantly done. He was the underdog today. They were not the favourite to do it. They only won because of his driving ability. And it was brilliant to watch from start to finish. Both him and Max, fantastic, up and down that race. I absolutely loved it. I was on the edge of my seat for so much of it. And I was whooping and hollering for both of them the whole way through that last lap. It was brilliant. And thank you to them for it unexpectedly. But Hamilton does take pride of the day for me.
Driver of the day for you, Harry?
I mean, I absolutely concur with all of Sam's points there, and I'm going to agree and going to go for Hamilton, because, as we've already mentioned, it was him that won the race for Merck. Other mention is little Yuki Tsunoda for absolutely planting one on Fernando Alonso from miles back. Like, not many people do that.
He started that move in my kitchen.
Exactly. I think the only other person who's done that is fellow countryman Takuma Sato. So that was a great little battle there. But I'm gonna settle for Hamilton. But it was great because there are so many contenders for driver of the day.
For me it's a coin flip between two drivers. The driver that you've both given it to, Lewis Hamilton, of course he did an exceptional job there, but I am going to give it to someone else. I'm going to go for Lando Norris. Beating Daniel Ricciardo by 20 seconds is no mean feat whatsoever. That is seriously impressive. I don't care if it's Daniel Ricciardo's first race in the McLaren. That is a statement of a performance from Lando Norris. I was super impressed with what he was able to do out there. They were in somewhat of a tussle in the first lap. They were side by side for what seemed like about half the lap, and Lando Norris proved in that moment that he wasn't going to give away the position. He wasn't going to let him, as the more experienced driver, stroll past. He stuck his elbows out, and he proved that, I've been the one here for the last few years. I've got a future in the sport. Lando Norris for me, exceptional performance to finish fourth. From good to bad, worst driver of the day, Sam.
Well, we spoke about Valjee Bottas. I'm not going to kick the the season with a Valjee Bottas worst driver of the day. We've got 22 other races. We'll catch up. Don't worry. Plenty of time for it, folks. I'm going to have to give it to Sebi Vet. Sorry, Sebi Vet. You've literally just absolutely bum punted Ocon off the track at one point. I've said bum because there's another rude word that I could have said, and bum is completely appropriate. You have literally, and then you've moaned about it like it's Ocon's fault. Oh, he broke for the corner and changed the line. Plays Ocon's camera driving in a straight line on the racing line. Vettel was nowhere in comparison to his teammate, and okay, we do expect the new drivers to be slightly behind the guys that are used to the team in the car. Fair. Let's make a tough start, but did not make the moves I expected him to make first off. It did get stuck in with some moves, but he was left out to dry on this awful strategy, which, he's got the experience to call some shots and get in there, like Alonso was doing on his first race back in 4 millennia. And then Sebastian Vettel, did he fall asleep? Was he playing a video game? What was he doing? Was he on the phone? He literally rear-ended Ocon into Imola for the next race, and it was awful. So I think Sebastian Vettel, worst driver of the day.
Yeah, I mean, vicious swerve by Ocon on the start-finish straight there. Harry, who have you got for worst driver of the day?
I'm going to give it to Nikita Mazepin because
he did a
lot of chat about Mazepin over the winter, and he has responded by saying, "I'll do my talking out on the track." And quite frankly, Nikita, all you've done is spin every session. So. Yeah, it's got. I think Seb at least did some good moves earlier in the race to not be. It might not be worst drive of the day, but yeah, Mazepin was. That Haas is obviously tricky to drive because Schumacher also had a spin, but
Where was he going? Where was he off to? That was
Dunno.
hilarious to watch in the background.
yeah, Bahrain Auto Loop. I'm not sure. Yeah, but Mazepin for me.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going with the theory that Nikita Mazepin is going to do his talking on the track, he literally said, blah, 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 blah. I mean, that was not a pretty drive. Mainly because it didn't last very long. I had two names down, and you've given them both, Mazepin and Vettel. I'll give it to Vettel just because it was Mazepin's first race in Formula One. It was not a good debut. I'm struggling to think the last time a debut went that poorly, but it was a debut nonetheless. Vettel, it was not his debut. It was for Aston Martin, but he's actually been in Formula One for a bit longer than this one race, if you didn't know. He's been around for a while, and he ultimately ruined his chances of points. I think he made a decent recovery. He tried something a bit different. Pretty much everyone else was tied to a two-stop. He tried a one-stop. Whether that was driver-led, whether that was team-led, I'm not sure. I think given his starting position, it was probably worth trying something. I don't think that Aston Martin has quite got the pace of like Perez, where he was able to recover from a bad position. I don't think on an ordinary strategy, Vettel would have done exactly the same thing. So I can understand why they tried something different. And ultimately, he was making his way through the field and he made an error that cost him massively. And he ended up finishing in 15th place when, I think, he had a chance at least with the Alfa Romeos towards the end of the Grand Prix. If he doesn't collide with Ocon, has a chance possibly at P10. Who knows if it happens or not, but he at least needs to give himself the opportunity by not crashing into someone. So, yeah, Vettel for me. Moment of the race, Sam.
It's definitely got to be the moment that Mick Schumacher in the background doesn't. No, I'm joking. Poor Mick. Sorry, Mick. Sorry. No, it's got to be the moment, of course, that Max Verstappen attempted to pass Lewis Hamilton going around the outside. Of course, track limits that corner have been a huge cause for debate, probably over the last 12 months in terms of speaking about Bahrain. It's a silly corner. Why do we have to go off one way and then you see them pop back on camera and it's quite funny, and then all of a sudden no, we can't have that anymore, and then Max paid the price in what clearly was a bit confusing for a lot of the drivers throughout the whole weekend, and that deciding it, that was what changed the shape of the race. It seemed like it was a slam dunk for Max Verstappen. He was going to come down the start, finish straight, outbrake Lewis Hamilton on dead tyres, and that was going to be it, race written. But that set us up for a brilliant last 3 or 4 laps of absolute hysteria, neck-to-neck racing. It was brilliant to watch. And that is I think that is going to be the metaphor for this season, I hope, of pushing it to the edge, wheel to wheel, can't wait for it, get you on the edge of the seat, shouting at the screen. And that's what I want every race, and they delivered it. It was brilliant, and I absolutely loved it.
Moment of the race, Harry?
Agree with Sam there. For the sake of variety, I will go for the Alonso Sainz Vettel battle that we had about mid-race, which was spicy. I love that, and it was all fair and clean, and it was a bit poetic. You had former Ferrari driver versus new Ferrari driver. So and it was a great battle. So I'll go for that one for me. But lots to choose from, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to go for, the moment in the race where I heard something in the kitchen, went over, see what was going on.
Yuki, where have you gone?
What are you doing, mate?
There was someone standing in my kitchen. I know who that is. And he's like, hello, Ben. I'm like, Yuki. All right, mate. And then he's like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I can see Alonso just in a few countries over there. I'm gonna go for it, and he did. He absolutely sent it down the. What a move!
What a statement!
It says a lot that because obviously we didn't catch it live because we don't catch things live. We saw it on the replay. I thought, okay, I'm not quite sure why we're viewing this. I think they've got the wrong lap possibly, or the wrong corner, or they've got the wrong people. That's Yuki Tsunoda. Okay, no, he's going for this. That's impressive. Well done, Yuki. That was a good move.